The whole point of having due process in this country, and really any country, is so that you can find out what the truth is, right? There's lots of allegations against Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The Trump administration has called him a gang member, a terrorist, and a human trafficker. Those are serious things to say about someone. Yesterday, the DOJ released this trove of documents intending to show that the man is an MS-13 gang member, including something called a gang field interview sheet that was put together in 2019 from the Prince George's County Police Department of Maryland. The report alleges that during a 2019 interview with police, Abrego Garcia was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and a hoodie with rolls of money covering the eyes, ears, and mouth of the presidents on the separate denominations. Officers know such clothing to be indicative of Hispanic gang culture. The report also says officers spoke to a, quote, reliable source of information who advised Abrego Garcia is an active member of MS-13. Today, the Prince George's County Police Department released a statement confirming that Abrego Garcia was never charged with a crime. They also confirmed that one of the officers who put together that gang field interview sheet pleaded guilty to misconduct in office in an unrelated case and was fired in 2022. Now, Abrego Garcia's lawyers and family say he is not a gang member, and we know that he has no criminal record. But of course, none of these allegations, right, against Abrego Garcia are definitive one way or the other. The whole point of hundreds of years of legal tradition we are inheritors to is that there is a process to establish these contested facts. They could have just held an immigration hearing. As Judge J. Harvey Wilkinson, the legendary conservative Reagan appointee on the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, noted in a remarkable ruling today, one that thunders with righteous indignation from a jurist long admired on the right. Wilkinson writes, quote, "The government asserts that Abrego Garcia is a terrorist and a member of MS-13. Perhaps, perhaps not. Regardless, he is still entitled to due process. If the government is confident of its position, it should be assured that position will prevail in proceedings to terminate the withholding of removal order," right? That was the order that was in place to stop him from being deported to El Salvador. So, in other words, if you guys are so certain he's guilty, it should be easy to prove. In fact, the standard that would pertain here would be a preponderance of the evidence, not even beyond a reasonable doubt, right? That portion I read you was part of the larger decision today in which the Fourth Circuit rejected efforts by the Trump DOJ to short-circuit the lower court's order to facilitate Abrego Garcia's return from that prison in El Salvador. Judge Wilkinson also included a stark warning, quote, "It is difficult in some cases to get to the very heart of the matter, but in this case it is not hard at all. The government is asserting a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process that is the foundation of our constitutional order. Further, it claims in essence that because it has rid itself of custody, that there is nothing that can be done. This should be shocking, not only to judges, but to the intuitive sense of liberty that Americans far removed from courthouses still hold dear." Ashra Agapa is a former FBI special agent, now an assistant dean at the Yale Jackson School of Global Affairs, and she joins me now. Good to have you here.
Thanks.
This was a 7-page opinion order issued by the Fourth Circuit, authored by Wilkinson. It really sort of put me back in my chair.
Yeah, I think when he says it's very simple to get to the heart of the matter, you know, there aren't many silver linings in this Abrego Garcia situation, but we do have the fact that we've gone from zero to Pinochet in 100 days. And it's pretty clear where we are. When I teach habeas corpus in my national security law class, I use as sort of the hyperbolic example, habeas corpus is what stands between you and the president grabbing you in the middle of the night and throwing you into a foreign gulag. And that's not hyperbolic anymore. That is what is happening. It's such a foundational right that it is the right that is expressly forbidden from being suspended in the Constitution. And it's in Article 1 because the framers knew that if you gave that power to the president, you might have a lot of invasions and rebellions to justify it. So the fact that this is happening, that the Trump administration has washed its hands of Abrego Garcia is simple lawlessness. There is no other word to describe it.
Yeah, that point about habeas, the Judge Wilkinson, at another point in the opinion, talks about, look, he calls him a resident of the country, which I thought was well characterized, right? He is a resident of the country. He's not a citizen. He is a resident of the country. And again, Deportation, like,
who gets constitutional rights.
this is actually a really important point. Can we
Yes.
just stay on this for a second?
Yes.
Like, this is a very established principle. We've played video on the program of Justice Scalia and Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg at a joint interview saying this. Constitutional rights in the United States are not just for citizens.
Correct.
Right? I mean, the 14th Amendment, right, says all persons. Like, there's not this neat line. Now, there are differences in terms of what process is due to be deported, and there are differences. But, like, generally, it's not the case the Constitution just stops existing because the person's not a citizen.
That's right. And that evidence that you were talking about that the Trump administration is now waving about, by the way, a judge looked at that
Right.
already and made a determination that actually this person has a credible fear of persecution if he is returned to El Salvador specifically.
Right.
And so, you know, the government is trying to frame this as a separation of powers, infringing on foreign affairs. I would do a reverse Uno here and say, no, this is actually the executive branch usurping judicial functions and acting as judge, jury, executioner. This man has been sentenced effectively to a life sentence or maybe death, we don't know, without the due process that he is entitled, and that is a function of the judicial branch. So this is an attempt truly to cut out one branch from power, to consolidate this power.
Yeah, that part of it is just so important. Like, if someone's deported under the normal course, right? That's like a traumatic thing. It could be cataclysmic for them and their family. There's real human cost to that. But if you get off a plane and you're a free citizen,
they're going to prison
in wherever it is, Uzbekistan, Chile, whatever.
Correct.
You're not in a prison. You cannot. Not only can you, there is no avenue for process. I mean, that's what Wilkinson's saying here. It's the nightmare scenario, and this seems to me very much targeted at the Supreme Court, which he's very deferential to, and being like, "Hey, fellow conservatives on SCOTUS, if we agree about anything, it's got to be this." Well,
because it's also about their own role and relevance in anything. When in the Guantanamo cases, that was where they drew the line, because even the Guantanamo detainees got to go before a judge and have a judge say whether or not the government has shown that they're an enemy combatant. So this is really about this is about the court's own survival. And I would also push back on the foreign affairs piece that this is a domestic policy solution.
Right.
This isn't about our relationship with El Salvador.
No, they've been contracted.
Or military, trade or whatever.
Right.
This is a contractor who is helping solve a domestic problem. So whatever foreign affairs deference should be granted, it is very narrow, and certainly it should have more than what has not been done, I guess, in this case.
Asher Angab, it's great to have you here.